The royal alpha did not force Elara across the salt bridge to prove she loved him. He forced her across to prove she had never left a lawful step anywhere. That was what the Moonsalt Court wanted. Not a confession, not a crime, not even blood. They wanted absence. They wanted the sacred bridge to show what every noble house had always believed about the oathless ward who slept beside the salt stores and scrubbed the marriage stones before dawn. No mark, no claim, no place where her feet had ever mattered. Elara stood barefoot before the bridge while winter moonlight turned the white salt stone blue. Below, the black tide struck the cliffs in slow, violent breaths. Above, the royal court watched from carved terraces hung with wolf banners and silver marriage chains. The salt bridge stretched between the royal keep and the vow shore, narrow and pale, ancient enough to remember the first wolf king who swore that no false oath would cross it whole. Every royal marriage walked this bridge. Every treaty bride. Every Luna candidate. Every vow the kingdom wanted the gods to believe. But servants did not walk it. Servants washed it after others did. That was why Elara's presence on the first stone felt more shameful to the court than if she had been dragged there in chains. Lady Selkavorn stood beside the ceremonial salt basin in a gown of white wolf silk, her pale hair pinned with pearls, her throat circled by the silver vow chain prepared for the future Luna. She did not look afraid. She looked offended, as if Elara's bare feet had dirtied the night by existing near her ceremony. At the center of the court stood Royal Alpha Dane Morcant. He wore black armor beneath a fur-lined cloak, tall and still, with storm-gray eyes and a face made dangerous by restraint. His wolf shadow crouched behind him against the cliff wall, massive and dark, but its head moved restlessly, scenting nothing. That had become the private sickness of the Morcant throne. Dane's wolf could still track enemies. Fear, blood, and lies spoken aloud. But true vows had begun to smell like smoke to it. Elara did not know that. She only knew the Alpha had not looked at her since the accusation was read. High Salt Seer Aurel struck his staff against the bridge. Elara, unwanted ward of the Royal Salt House, servant of no sworn pack. You are accused of leaving unlawful steps upon the bride path before Lady Selka's crossing. A murmur rippled through the court. Unlawful steps. Elara looked down at her own feet. They were cracked from salt water, scarred from stone brushes, and raw from years of walking where others told her to stand. She had been called oathless since childhood because no oathstone warmed for her. No packmark rose under moon fever, and no wolf answered when the elders cut her palm at 13. But last night, after she scrubbed the salt bridge for Selka's dawn vow rehearsal, 7 barefoot marks had appeared in the salt. Not hers, they said. Impossible, they said. Unless she had tried to stain the royal marriage path with an unlicensed claim. Selka's voice came soft and clear. Let her walk, Majesty. If she is truly oathless, the bridge will reject her steps. Then no one can say I feared a servant. Elara looked at Dane then. Only once. She wanted him to ask why a future Luna needed an oathless servant disproved before she could cross with confidence. But Dane's jaw hardened. Walk, he said. The word did not shout. It still pushed her forward. He did not look away. That was worse. It meant he wanted the bridge to prove her absence clearly. Elara stepped onto the salt bridge. Cold bit into her skin. The first stone held silent beneath her foot. The court leaned closer, hungry for nothing. Nothing would prove them right. Nothing would make her easier to throw back into the salt house before sunrise. She took a second step. Still nothing. Someone laughed. Selka's smile deepened. Elara kept walking. The third step opened a cut on her heel. Salt entered the wound, sharp enough to blur her vision. She refused to limp. If the bridge wanted pain from her, it would not get performance with it. The fourth step changed the air. Dane's wolf shadow rose. The court went quiet. Beneath Elara's foot, the salt warmed. She looked down and saw a thin gold line appear around her heel. Not a mate mark. Not a Luna sign. Not a royal claim. It was shaped like a small doorway drawn flat into the salt, with one bare footprint inside it. High Salt Seer Aurel inhaled. That is not bride law. Elara lifted her foot. The mark remained. Then another appeared where she had stepped before. And another. The bridge was not saying she belonged to the Alpha. It was saying someone had used her steps before. It had not found love. It had found theft. Dane saw it. His expression shifted, not into softness, but into alarm. "What is that mark?" he demanded. Orlan did not answer. Selka did. "Salt glare," she said quickly. "A servant's blood can stain old stone. Make her finish." Evra turned toward her. "Why are you afraid of footprints if mine are supposed to mean nothing?" The court sucked in a breath. Dane's eyes cut to Elara. For a heartbeat. The space between them felt less like rank, and more like a blade laid flat between two hands. Then Selka lifted her skirts. "Enough. I will show you what a lawful step looks like." Dane moved. "Selka, wait." She did not. She stepped onto the bridge. The stone beneath her slipper cracked. Not wide. Not dramatic. A single black line opened under her foot and ran sideways. Away from Evara's glowing marks, toward the underside of the bridge. Selka froze. The court froze with her. Evra looked down. Beneath the cracked salt, something silver flickered. Not a marriage contract. Not a mate bond. A line of preserved footprints lay under the bridge, pressed into dark salt like fossils. Dozens of them. Bare, small, servant-sized. Each one crossed beneath the royal path without ever reaching the surface. Borrowed steps. Evra felt the truth before she understood it. The salt bridge had not been waiting to prove whether she belonged to Dane. It had been waiting for a foot that could not rest on a false vow. Selka took one frightened step back. The bridge split wider. Under her slipper, a hidden law surfaced through the salt. Royal vow may stand where witness feet have been borrowed. Oathless steps may substitute for broken Luna passage. True walker removed before ceremony. The words burned silver black beneath the bridge. Dane stared at them as if the tide had risen inside his chest. "Borrowed," he said. His wolf shadow snarled at the word. Selka's perfect face went white. Evara stood in the center of the bridge, blood on her heel, gold marks burning behind her, and for the first time in her life, the place beneath her feet refused to call her empty. Then the buried servant footprints under the salt bridge began to turn. Not toward Dane. Not toward Selka. Toward the royal salt vault beneath the marriage shore. And from below the bridge, something knocked back. The salt bridge had not exposed a romance. It had exposed a storage place. The buried footprints beneath the bridge turned toward the marriage shore, one by one, small silver impressions shifting under the cracked salt-like bones, remembering where they had been taken. They did not point toward Dane because they loved him. They did not point toward Selka because they hated her. They pointed past both of them, toward the royal salt vault built beneath the chapel where every royal vow was preserved after ceremony. Evra stood halfway across the bridge, blood drying on her heel, gold door-shaped prints glowing behind her. No one laughed now. Lady Selka had frozen on the cracked stone, one white slipper trapped above the black split. The vow chain at her throat flashed once, too red for moonlight, then went dull again. Her perfect face remained lifted, but fear had entered the corners of her mouth. High Salt Seer Orlan struck his staff against the bridge. No one speaks. That was when Evara knew the bridge had shown something worse than scandal. Scandal made nobles shout. Truth made priests ask for silence. Dane's eyes were fixed on the hidden law burning beneath the salt. Royal vow may stand where witness feet have been borrowed. Oathless steps may substitute for broken Luna passage. True walker removed before ceremony. His wolf shadow stood rigid behind him, hackles lifted, muzzle curled toward the vault path. The creature looked less like a royal beast now, and more like something scenting rot under a sealed door. Dane turned to Orlan. "What is stored in the salt vault?" Orlan's face went gray. "Marriage records, Majesty. Vow stones. Old salt casts. Sacred things." Evra looked at him. "Salt casts of what?" The priest did not answer. She asked again, quieter. "What did you store under my feet?" The bridge answered before he could. A thin silver line rose from the crack and etched itself across the salt between them. Witness feet archived. The court recoiled from the phrase. Selka recovered first. "This is corruption. The bridge was polluted before my crossing. She was near it last night. I was ordered to scrub it," Evra said. Selka smiled sharply. "Exactly." Dane's gaze shifted to Evara. "No tenda. Not yet. Worse." Searching. As if she had suddenly become evidence he did not know how to read. Evera felt anger move through her chest, slow and clean. You did not ask where my steps had gone until they pointed back at your marriage. His jaw tightened. Good. Let him feel the weight of arriving late. Dane looked to Orlin. Open the vault. Orlin bowed his head. Only a lawful walker may open the salt vault during a broken crossing. I am your alpha. The vault does not answer rank, Orlin said. It answers passage. Every eye moved to Evera. Suddenly, the girl they had wanted empty had become necessary. She almost laughed. Instead, she looked at Dane. You wanted the bridge to prove I was nothing. Do not look wounded because it found a use for me. The words struck him. His wolf shadow lowered its head once, as if ashamed before he was. Dane did not defend himself. You are right. The answer surprised her. It did not soften her. Selka's voice sharpened. Majesty. She is manipulating the ritual. Evera turned toward her. No. I am standing where you told me I had no right to stand. The gold footprints behind her brightened. They no longer led across the bridge. They curved toward the vault stair cut into the marriage shore. Evera understood the invitation. She hated it. All her life. Doors had opened only when someone needed labor from her. Kitchens. Linen rooms. Salt stores. Marriage halls before dawn. Now even sacred stone wanted her hand because the people who had used her forgot to bury the proof deeply enough. She looked at the glowing path. No. The court stilled. Orlin stared. You cannot refuse a bridge summons. I can refuse to become useful just because I am no longer invisible. Dane took one step toward the bridge. The salt under him did not glow. It only groaned. He stopped. Evera saw it and understood. He could not come for her without the bridge deciding whether his own steps were clean. He had forced her forward alone, and now the law he trusted had left him outside the answer. Evera, he said. She hated the way her name sounded different when he was afraid. No, she said. Say what you need before you use me again. His face closed, then opened painfully. I need the vault opened. For your marriage? His eyes flicked toward Selka, then back. For the truth. Too late to make that sound clean. The tide struck below them. Dane absorbed the words like a man who deserved them and knew it. Yes, that was not enough, but it was not a lie. Evera stepped off the bridge toward the marriage shore. The moment her bare foot touched the first stair to the vault, the salt door below the chapel unlocked. Not with a grand sound, with a small click, like a lock that had been waiting for a servant's foot. She descended alone. The vault beneath the marriage shore was colder than the bridge. Its walls were carved from dark salt veined with silver. Along both sides stood shelves filled not with jewels or crowns, but with footcasts, hundreds of them, small, thin, cracked, preserved in white salt. Some were adult, many were not. Evera stopped breathing. Each cast had a cord tied around it. Each cord held a broken vow thread. She touched one. A flash of memory struck her. A kitchen girl walking the bridge before sunrise, told she was cleaning frost from the stones. A noble bride crossing later without cracking the salt. The servant vanishing from the marriage wing before anyone could ask why her feet bled for 3 days. Evara pulled her hand back. She touched another girl. Another hidden crossing. Another broken vow absorbed before the ceremony. She had not been bondless. She had been made into the place broken vows could disappear. Above, Dane's voice came through the stairwell, rough. What do you see? Evera looked across the shelves. Us. Selka's voice followed, colder. Do not listen to her, Majesty. Oathless servants exaggerate injury because injury is the only inheritance they have. Evera turned toward the deepest shelf. Something there glowed faintly gold. Not silver like the others. Gold. She walked closer. At the back of the vault sat the oldest salt footprint, smaller than the rest. A child's cast, no bigger than her hand, preserved in a black bowl of moon salt. Around its tiny heel was the same door-shaped mark now glowing beneath her own bleeding foot. Evera touched it with trembling fingers. The vault answered. Not with love. Not with a mate bond. With memory. A little girl standing on the salt bridge at 7 years old, half asleep, wrapped in servant wool. A priest telling her to walk because the future of the kingdom needed quiet feet. Lady Selka. younger but already watching. Selka had not looked confused. She had looked instructed. Orlin held a silver knife, and Dane, not yet alpha, stood at the far end of the bridge, turning away because someone had told him the child was only part of the ritual. He had been old enough to look, young enough to be forgiven by others, not young enough to be harmless to her. Elara came back to herself with a broken breath. The oldest salt footprint in the vault was hers, and it had been taken years before she knew a vow could be stolen. The child's footprint in the black bowl did not make Elara feel remembered. It made her feel harvested. She stared at the tiny salt cast, smaller than her own hand, with the same door-shaped mark glowing around its heel. It should have felt impossible that something from her childhood had been preserved so carefully while she herself had been treated as if she left no trace at all. But the longer she looked at it, the more the truth settled into her bones. They had not forgotten her steps. They had stored them. Above the vault stair, Dane's voice came rough and low. Elara. The gold marks on the steps flared at his approach. He descended 3 stairs before the salt wall groaned. A white seam of light cut across the passage between them. Not a door. A refusal. The vault would not let him stand beside the oldest footprint. Not yet. Good, Elara thought. Let him learn what it felt like to be stopped outside an answer. He looked through the salt-lit barrier, his storm-gray eyes fixed on the black bowl. Is it yours? Elara lifted the cast with both hands. The moment it left the bowl, every shelf in the vault trembled. Hundreds of preserved foot casts clicked softly against stone, like teeth in the dark. How many times did you use me? She asked. The question was not loud. It still reached the bridge above. Silence followed. Then Orlin answered from the stairwell, voice thin. Careful, girl. Elara turned toward the sound. You called me oathless because no pack could claim injury for me. Was that why? Orlin said nothing. Dane looked up toward him. Answer her. The priest's hesitation was a confession before words arrived. Oathless children were safe witnesses, Orlin said at last. They carried no competing pack claim, no family debt, no bloodline capable of petitioning the Salt Council. Elara looked across the shelves. So if their steps hurt, no one could ask why. The kingdom required clean passages. No, she said. The kingdom required girls no one would miss. The salt vault shivered. A few old vow threads tied to the footcasts loosened and lifted into the air. Dane took 1 step farther down. The barrier burned brighter, forcing him back. His wolf shadow pressed behind him in the stairwell, too large for the narrow space, snarling at the vault it could not enter. Elara looked at Dane. Did you know? His face tightened. No. The answer came too quickly to comfort her. She waited. His throat moved. I knew there were bridge servants. The words scraped out of him. I was told not to look at them during rituals. They said looking made the work personal. Elara laughed once. It was not humor. You were taught not to see me, she said. I was taught to survive being unseen. Dane closed his eyes. The words landed. Good. She wanted them to. Lady Selka's voice came from above, sharp with fear hidden under contempt. This is a sentimental distortion. Every great house has paid for vow purification. It is legal, ancient, and necessary. The vow chain at her throat flashed red again. Elara looked up. Paid? Selka went silent. The vault answered with records. Silver salt plaques slid out from the shelves, each one tied to a foot cast by a thin cord of broken vow thread. Names appeared across them in pale light. Vorn, Ashvale, Morkant, Reus. Dane saw his house name and went still. Elara touched the plaque marked Vorn. Memory opened. Selka as a child, standing beside her mother in the marriage chapel, watching an oathless kitchen girl walk the bridge before a noble ceremony. The girl stumbled halfway across, bleeding into salt. Selka's mother leaned close and whispered, Remember, clean vows are not born. They are purchased. Young Selka nodded, not confused. Instructed, Elara released the plaque. The memory vanished, but Selka's vow chain tightened around her throat with a sharp metallic sound. Selka husped. The court murmured above. Dane turned toward her. Your family bought passage. Selka clutched the chain. My family preserved alliances your throne depends on. My throne? Her eyes flashed. Do not pretend you are innocent because you learned the price after others paid it. The words hit him. Elara saw that they did. But she did not let that soften the truth. Dane had not stolen her steps with his own hands. That did not make the stolen steps less royal. She turned to the shelf and touched another plaque. Morkant. The vault opened again. This time she saw Dane younger. Not a child anymore. Perhaps 16. Standing at the far end of the bridge while 3 servant girls crossed before a winter treaty vow. He did not laugh. He did not order them beaten. He simply looked away when one of them fell. A tutor beside him said, "An alpha must not confuse ritual labor with personal guilt." Young Dane nodded. The memory ended. Dane's face had gone pale. Elara looked at him through the barrier. "You wanted the bridge to prove I was nothing. Because nothing was easier for you." He did not deny it. His voice came low. Yes. That answer hurt differently. A lie would have given her somewhere clean to put her anger. Truth made the wound harder to hold. The childhood footcast warmed in her palms. A crack spread across its tiny heel. Every vow thread attached to the shelves began to move. Not toward Elara. Away from her. Toward the original footcasts. The stolen steps were trying to return to their walkers. Above, the salt bridge groaned. Selka cried out as the red flash at her throat became a tightening ring. Her vow chain pulled toward the vault stair, dragging her 1 step forward. Dane moved. "Selka." Evra's head snapped up. "Do not save the chain before you understand what it is tied to." He stopped. The command in her own voice startled her. It startled him too. Orlin hurried down 2 steps, face slick with fear. If the vow threads return all at once, every marriage purified through witness, feet becomes unstable. Treaties will fracture. Children born under those vows may lose standing. Pack alliances may turn on one another. There it was. The knife behind the altar cloth. Truth would not only punish Selka. It would break open every life built on hidden theft. Elara looked at the shelves of feet. Some belonged to girls long dead. Some perhaps still lived in kitchens, laundries, salt houses, and corridors, never knowing why their bodies ached after royal weddings. If the stolen steps returned too quickly, their lives might be torn apart all over again. She hated Orlin for making caution sound sensible. She hated herself for hearing the sense in it. Dane said quietly, "What do you need?" Elara looked at him. Not with gratitude. With warning. Do not make yourself useful and call it repair. He absorbed the blow. Then tell me what not to touch. That was better. Still not enough. She looked back at the footcast in her hands. The crack had widened. Something dark gleamed inside the salt, too soft to be stone. The black bowl opened beneath it. Evra's breath caught. Inside the hollow of her childhood footprint lay a tiny strip of preserved skin. Pale from moon salt, folded like a secret someone had been too careful to throw away. Her skin, taken with the step. The vault walls began to whisper. Not mate. Not Luna. Not bride. Witness material retained. Elara stared at the strip of herself hidden inside the footprint. Then every salt cast in the vault turned toward her at once. Not toward Luna. Toward the first piece of stolen proof returned to a living hand. The vault had not found its Luna. It had found its inventory error. Every salt cast on every shelf had turned toward Elara because she held what the vault was never meant to return. A piece of witness. Material taken from a living hand. Not a crown. Not a mate mark. Not a sacred bond. Proof. The tiny strip of preserved skin lay inside the cracked childhood footprint. Pale and curled from years in moon salt. Elara could barely look at it. It was too small to feel real, and yet her body knew it. Her heel throbbed. The door-shaped mark beneath her foot burned as if some forgotten part of her had finally realized it had been missing. Orlin stood on the vault steps. Face gray. Put it back. Elara looked at him. No. If witness material is removed without controlled release, every vow, thread tied to it may seek correction. Good. No. His voice sharpened. You do not understand correction. Marriages will fracture. Treaties may become unlawful. Children born under purified vows could lose standing. Houses will accuse houses. Packs will turn their teeth inward. Dane remained behind the salt barrier, unable to enter fully. His wolf shadow pressed behind him, black and restless, its muzzle lowered toward the shelves of stolen feet. Elara looked at him through the pale seam of light. That is what you were afraid of, isn't it? Not that the bridge would lie, that it would stop lying carefully. Dane's jaw tightened. He did not deny it. Selka's voice came from above, strained now. Her vow chain was pulling her toward the vault stairs, one painful inch at a time. Majesty, end this. She is unraveling royal law. Elara lifted the childhood cast. No. I am holding one thing that belongs to me. The salt cast clicked again, hundreds of stolen steps answering a sentence no one in the vault had allowed before. Mine. Dane's voice came low. Let me help. Elara turned on him so sharply the gold marks beneath her feet flared. Do not carry what you once refused to see. The words struck him hard. His wolf shadow lowered its head. Dane breathed once, slowly. Then tell me what truth I must speak. That stopped her. Not because it was enough. Because it was the first offer that did not put his hands on her wound. Orlan's eyes widened. Majesty. Dane looked up toward the court gathered above the stair. Hear me. The moonsalt court went silent. Dane did not wear apology well. It sat on him like armor turned inside out. Still, he spoke. Morcant marriage law used oathless children as witness feet. The vault shuddered. Orlan whispered, Do not. Dane continued. Their steps were taken before ceremonies to absorb broken vow paths. Their injuries were unclaimed because no pack was allowed to claim them. This was done under Salt Council authority, noble payment, and royal protection. The word royal landed like iron. Elara watched him. She wanted it to heal something. It did not. But the truth stood where his silence had been. Above, Selka gasped as the vow chain tightened again. You would shame your own throne for her? Dane looked toward the bridge, not at Elara. No, for what was done. Good, Elara thought. Do not make me the reason. Make the crime the reason. The childhood cast cracked wider. A thin gold thread slipped out from the preserved skin and stretched toward the shelves. Orlan lunged down another step. If you let it choose, it may return to the wrong body. Some walkers are dead. Some have married. Some carry children. Some have forgotten enough to survive. Elara hated him for being right again. The stolen steps wanted to go home. But home was not simple after years of theft. A returned wound could reopen a life. A returned vow could ruin a woman who had survived by not knowing why she hurt. Elara looked across the shelves. Whose step was stolen first after mine? The vault answered with movement. Not every cast. 1. A salt footprint slid forward from the highest shelf near the back. It was larger than a child's, but narrow, elegant, and cracked along the arch. Its vow thread was blackened, not silver. Around the heel was the mark of the royal house. Morcant. Dane went still. The barrier between them dimmed for one breath, as if the vault itself had turned to watch him. Elara touched the cast. A memory rose. A young woman crossing the salt bridge in a dark blue cloak, not white. Her hair was black like Dane's, braided simply, her chin lifted in fear she refused to show. She was not a servant. She was not a bride. The court called her Princess Malis Morcant. Diane made a sound. Not loud. Enough. My sister, he said. Elara saw the rest. Malis standing before Orlan years ago, refusing a political Luna exchange because the vow was false. She had discovered that great houses bought clean passages. She had tried to expose the salt vault. So the council made her cross at night and took her step as witness material. Her refusal was rewritten as illness. Her disappearance as retreat to a moon convent. Her vow thread, broken and black, was used to stabilize later royal marriage law. Selka's family had not created the theft. They had inherited the purchase. Dane gripped the salt barrier with both hands. I was told she left. Orlan's face emptied. She threatened the marriage order. She was my sister. She was a danger to the throne. Elara looked at Dane. You did not ask where she went? His face broke in a way she had not expected. I was 12. Evara's voice stayed quiet. 12 did not make Dane harmless. Elara saw the words reach him before she spoke them. His hands stayed pressed against the salt barrier, his face pale beneath the moonlight leaking down from the stairwell. For the first time since she had known him, the royal alpha looked less like a man holding power and more like a boy standing outside a closed door, finally understanding that someone had told him not to knock. "You were young," Evra said. But she was gone. Dane closed his eyes. The salt vault did not soften for him. Good. Some doors should not open just because a king had learned how to ache. The footprint marked Morcant trembled in Avara's hand. Melis's blackened vow thread lifted from it like a burned vein, stretching not toward Avara, not toward Selka, but toward the cracked underside of the salt bridge above them. The bridge groaned as if a buried step had pulled at its bones. Orlan moved down one stair. "If you restore Princess Melis's witness, foot, you challenge every marriage law signed after her removal." Dane opened his eyes. "How many?" Orlan said nothing. Dane's voice lowered. "How many vows used my sister's stolen step?" The vault answered instead. Salt plaques slid from the shelves and struck the floor one by one. Vorn, Ashvale, Race, Thornmere, Morcant again, noble houses, border alliances, moon treaties, bride exchanges. Every plaque tied back to Melis's cracked footprint by thin black threads. The moon salt court above began to whisper in panic. Evra looked at Dane. "Your sister was not erased because she failed a vow." His jaw clenched. "She was erased because she refused to let others buy clean ones." Selka's vow chain jerked hard enough to pull a cry from her throat. "Enough. Dead princesses do not rewrite living marriages." Evra looked up toward the stairwell. "Is she dead?" The question silenced the vault. Even Dane stopped breathing. Orlan's face turned old in an instant. That was answer enough. Dane stepped into the barrier. It burned across his chest, forcing him back, but he did not retreat fully. "Where is Melis?" Orlan's voice thinned. "She was given to the Tide Convent." "Where?" "The convent no longer stands." Dane's wolf shadow slammed one paw against the stair wall. Salt cracked. Above them, the bridge shook. Evra gripped Melis's footprint before the vow thread could tear free. "Do not break the vault." Dane's gaze snapped to her. Her voice sharpened. "You do not get to destroy the record because grief finally reached you." The words landed hard. His wolf shadow went still first. Then Dane. He swallowed. "What do I do?" Evara looked at the Morcant footprint, then at the shelves of stolen steps. "You name what she was before they turned her into law." Dane's voice broke at the edge. "Melis Morcant." The black thread brightened. "Not stabilizer," Evra said. "Not stabilizer. Not illness. Not illness. Not convent silence." His mouth tightened. "Not convent silence." The vault waited. Evra looked at him through the salt barrier. "What was she?" Dane's eyes lowered. "My sister," he said. Then, after a breath stronger, "A rightful witness against the Salt Council." Melis's footprint cracked open. Not shattered. Opened. Inside the salt cast was a strip of preserved skin like Evera's, darker with age, wrapped around a tiny sliver of blue thread. The thread moved as if it had been waiting years for breath. The vault whispered. "Witness material retained. Returned by living acknowledgement." The black vow thread pulled loose from the plaques on the floor. One by one, the noble names dimmed. Their marriages did not break apart at once. They shook. They became uncertain. They became answerable. That was worse for the court than destruction. Destruction could be blamed on magic. Answerability required memory. Selka stumbled at the top of the stair, the vow chain dragging her closer to the vault. Her white silk was no longer perfect. Salt dust streaked the hem, and fear had made her beauty sharp. "My family paid lawful price," she said. Evra looked at her. "For whose pain?" Selka did not answer. The chain answered for her. It pulled her one step down. Dane turned. "Selka, did you know Melis's step was tied to your passage?" Selka's face twisted. "Everyone who matters knows the bridge must be fed." The words moved through the vault like a slap. Evra felt all the footcasts click toward her again. Not toward a queen, toward proof. Selka realized too late that she had spoken plainly. Orlan hissed, "My lady." But the damage had already entered the salt. The salt bridge above cracked louder, and the hidden silver law beneath it began to change. Not fully, not cleanly. The bridge did not rewrite itself for romance. It corrected the first theft it could reach. A new line burned beneath the bridge. Royal vow supported by unwilling witness feet must stand trial before completion. The court erupted. Dane looked toward the bridge, then back to Elara. Can the trial wait? Evra almost smiled. Almost. You asked that like a king who still thinks truth should schedule itself around ceremonies. He accepted the blow. You are right. The answer was becoming familiar. It still did not heal. Elara placed Melis's opened footprint beside her own childhood cast. The two marks glowed together. Servant and princess. Both made into storage because one had no pact to claim her, and the other had too much blood to safely hear. That was when Elara understood the shape of the theft. They used oathless girls because no one could defend them, she said. And royal daughters because everyone would be told not to question where they went. Dane's face went colder, not with anger at her, with the beginning of a war inside himself. Orlan saw it and moved quickly. He raised his staff and struck the vault wall. By Salt Council emergency right, all unstable witness, material returns to sealed custody. The shelves slammed shut. Evera's hands locked around the two opened casts. Salt chains burst from the walls, reaching not for Dane or Selka, but for the tiny strips of preserved skin inside the footprints. No, not again. Evera pulled the casts against her chest. The chains wrapped around her wrists instead. Pain shot through her arms. Dane lunged against the barrier. Elara! She looked up at him through the burning salt light. Do not make this about saving me. The chains tightened. Her knees hit the vault floor. Orlan's voice rang above her. Witness! Material cannot remain in living hands unless the living body accepts full vow debt. Dane went still. What does that mean? Orlan's eyes glittered with terrible relief. If she insists on holding stolen proof, she carries the broken vows attached to it. The chains burned colder. Evera felt the first broken vow enter her skin. Not love, not bond, debt. Her breath tore from her. The shelves opened again, and every vow thread in the vault lifted toward her. Dane's wolf shadow howled. Selka whispered, horrified. She will be buried under them. Orlan's voice was merciless. Then let the oathless girl finally belong to something. The vault floor split beneath Evera's knees, and every stolen step began crawling toward her body. The first vow thread touched Evera's wrist and stopped. It should have entered her. That was what Orlan expected. His face had already taken on the calm of a man watching a sentence become complete. The vault had opened. The stolen steps had risen. The oathless girl had been forced to hold the proof, and now the broken vows were supposed to pour into her body until she became another silent place where royal damage could disappear. But the thread stopped at her skin. Then it smoked. Evera gasped as cold pain ran up her arm. The salt chains tightened around her wrists, dragging her lower. But the vow thread could not sink into her. It crawled over her skin, searching for entry, then recoiled as if it had touched a flame. Another thread struck her, then another. Each one burned silver-black against her skin and failed to settle. Orlan's expression changed. Not fear yet. Recognition pretending not to be fear. Dane saw it. What is happening? Orlan did not answer. Evera lifted her head from the vault floor, breath shaking. You said the oathless girl would belong to the debt. The chains cut colder. She held Melis's footprint, and her own childhood cast against her chest with both hands. Why does the debt not want me? The vault answered with the smallest sound. A step. Not from above. From beneath her own bare foot. Gold light opened under her heel, forming the same door-shaped mark that had burned across the bridge. But this time, the mark did not stay flat. It rose in a thin circle around her ankle, like a ring made of salt fire. The vow threads struck again. The gold mark rejected them. Orlan whispered, no. Dane's wolf shadow snarled. Elara looked at Orlan. You know what this is. The priest's mouth tightened. Selka, dragged halfway down the vault stair by her own tightening chain, looked between them with a terror she could no longer dress as pride. Tell him, she hissed. Tell the Alpha before she makes herself holy. Evera laughed once through the pain. I am not holy. The gold mark flared under her other foot. I am tired. The vault shuddered. The shelves of foot casts clicked toward her again. But not like worship. Like records waiting to be sorted correctly for the first time. Dane pressed one hand against the salt barrier. Orlan. The priest's face hardened. Lie. Step blood. The words made the vault colder. Evravan still. Orlan continued. Bitter now. An old line. Nearly extinguished. Their footprints cannot rest on false vows. They were used once as bridge witnesses, until the councils learned they could not be safely controlled. Evra's voice was low. So you called me oathless. We thought the line had thinned. You thought wrong. The gold around her feet brightened. Not power like a crown. Not aluna mark. A refusal given shape. She had not been chosen by the bridge. She had become the first record the bridge could no longer keep stolen. Dane stared at her as if the floor had opened under everything he had believed about law. You knew her blood could reject false vows? Orlan's eyes flicked away. That was enough. Dane turned cold. You tested her as a child. She was found near the salt gate with no packmark. So you harvested her. We preserved useful witness material. Evra's fingers closed tighter around the casts. You preserved pieces of my body. Orlan said nothing. The silence was its own confession. Then Dane moved. The salt barrier burned against his hand, but he did not pull back. His wolf shadow pressed behind him. Black fur bristling with pain. Put the vow dead on me, he said. Evra looked at him sharply. No. His jaw clenched. I ordered you onto the bridge. Yes. I let this law stand. Yes. I should carry. You do not get to become noble by taking the thing after it starts hurting visibly. The words cut him silent. Evra's breath came hard, but she stayed upright on her knees. You want to help? Speak where your silence mattered. Dane stared at her. Then he turned toward the court above. His voice rose through the stairwell and across the broken bridge. The Salt Council used oathless children as witness storage. Morcant law protected it. Morcant silence fed it. Any vow purified by stolen steps will stand trial before completion or inheritance claim. Above, the court erupted. Selka screamed. You will ruin half the noble houses. Dane did not look at her. Then half the noble houses should have asked why clean vows left blood on servant feet. The vault trembled. One vow thread loosened from Evra's wrist and returned to the shelf. Then another. Not all. Not enough. But proof that speech mattered when spoken by the man who had once refused to look. Orlan saw the shift and struck the vault floor with his staff. Emergency salt custody. If the lie step refuses debt, bind her feet. Remove the step from the walker. The chains moved. Not toward Avara's wrists this time. Toward her ankles. Dane slammed both hands into the barrier. Orlan! Evra felt the vault preparing to repeat its oldest violence. Not kill the witness, not crown her. Not even silence her fully. Take the step. Leave the girl. Her childhood footprint cracked again in her hands. Inside the strip of preserved skin, a thin line of gold pulsed like a living nerve. Melis's cast answered beside it. Evra understood. Repair could not begin by saving every vow. It had to begin by returning one stolen step to one person without turning that person into a container again. She looked at the shelves. Who is still alive? The vault went still. Even Orlan stopped moving. Evra lifted her chin. Show me one walker who can receive her own step. The salt casts trembled. A cast near the middle shelf slid forward. Adult. Thin. Cracked across the toes. Its cord held a pale blue vow thread marked with kitchen ash. A name appeared on the attached plaque. Narapel. Laundry servant. Living. Avara's heart struck hard. She knew Nara, an older woman from the lower washhouse who walked with a limp and never spoke during wedding weeks. Evra pressed her own gold-marked foot to the floor. Return Narapel's step to Narapel. Not to me, not to the crown, not to the bridge. The vault hesitated. Orlan snarled. You have no authority. The gold marks under Avara's feet burned brighter. No, she said. I have precedent. The vow thread snapped free from the shelf and shot upward through the vault ceiling. Far above, somewhere in the royal washhouse, a woman cried out. Not in death. In recognition. The salt cast of Narapel dissolved into white dust. One broken vow thread vanished from the vault. The salt bridge groaned as a single hidden footprint under its stones rose to the surface, no longer buried beneath royal passage. The court fell silent. Elara had not broken a marriage. She had returned a step. Selka stared at her with open hatred now. If she returns them one by one, my chain will have nothing left to stand on. The vow chain at her throat flashed red and pulled tighter. Elara looked at her. For the first time, she understood why Selka was truly afraid. Not because Elara loved Dane. Because Elara could return the stolen ground Selka had been standing on. Then the oldest black bowl opened wider in Evara's hands. Beneath her preserved skin lay a second strip. Not skin, a piece of silver vow chain. And on it was engraved Selka Vorn's name. The silver chain piece in Evara's childhood footprint did not make Selka look like a stolen bride. It made her look like a buyer. Elara stared at the tiny engraved name in the black bowl, her hands shaking around the cracked salt cast. Selka Vorn. The letters were too clean, too careful. Carved into the strip of vow chain, as if someone had wanted the vault to remember exactly who had paid for the use of a child's step. Above, Selka made a strangled sound. Not surprise. Recognition. Dane heard it. His gaze lifted slowly toward her. You knew. Selka's face had gone bloodless. But pride kept her spine straight. I knew what every future Luna is taught. A vow must have ground. If the bridge will not give clean ground, ground is purchased. Evara's stomach turned. Ground. Not girl. Not child. Not body. Ground. That was how they survived, saying it aloud. Orlin gripped his staff. Lady Selka. Be silent. No, Elara said. Let her speak. The vault responded to her voice. The gold marks around her feet widened, and the chains at her ankles recoiled an inch. Not released. Listening. Selka's vow chain dragged her another step down the stair. Her white silk scraped salt from the walls. Do you think I invented this? My mother wore purchased ground. Her mother wore purchased ground. Every great house with sense protects its daughters before they step onto a bridge built to humiliate women for men's politics. For the first time, something human cracked through her cruelty. Not enough to pardon it. Enough to explain why she had sharpened herself into a blade. Elara looked at her. So, you protected yourself by placing your fear under my feet. Selka's mouth tightened. No answer. Dane's voice was cold. You were instructed as a child. Selka laughed bitterly. So were you. That landed. Dane did not flinch away from it. But his silence admitted the wound. Elara looked back into the black bowl. Why was your chain inside my cast? The vault answered before Orlin could. A memory rose from the silver piece. Elara saw herself at 7, half asleep on the bridge, a small body wrapped in servant wool. Orlin held her upright by the shoulder. Young Selka stood near the marriage shore, watching with wide, hard eyes. Her mother placed a tiny silver chain into the salt seer's hand. Anchor it there, Lady Vorn said. If my daughter's vow ever shakes, let the oathless step take the first fracture. Young Selka looked at Elara, not confused, instructed. Then Dane appeared at the far end of the bridge, turning away as his tutor bent close. Do not look at the bridge servants, the man said. Rulers must learn which pain belongs to the realm. The memory vanished. Elara came back to herself with salt in her throat. Dane looked as if he had been struck. Elara did not comfort him. You were taught not to see me, she said. Selka was taught how to use me. Both lessons worked. The vault went still around the sentence. Then the silver chain piece in the bowl began to pull. One end stretched toward Selka's throat. The other remained embedded in Evara's childhood cast. Selka gasped as her vow chain tightened. Stop it! Elara looked at the chain between them. I am not doing this. No, Orlin said, his voice suddenly sharp with fear. The vault is correcting ownership. Evara's eyes lifted. Ownership? He realized his mistake too late. Dane turned on him. You called it ownership. Orlin's face hardened. Legal anchoring, then. A vow chain requires a body to bear first fracture. The Vorn chain was anchored in the girl because her feet had already proven resistant to false passage. Elara felt cold spread through her, not because she was weak, because she finally understood why they had kept taking from her. Her body did not accept false vows, so they used it as a shield against them. Selka had not stolen love. She had rented Evera's refusal. Elara looked at the chain piece. Return it. Orlan stepped down. If that chain returns fully to Lady Selka, her Luna passage collapses before the court. Good. If it collapses while she stands on the salt bridge, the bridge may take her life. Dane moved at once. Evara's head snapped toward him. Do not. He froze. Selka stared at Elara with hatred and terror. You would let me fall? Evara's voice stayed quiet. You let me be used before I knew what a vow was. I was a child. So was I. The words cut deeper because neither of them could escape them. For one breath, they were not future Luna and oathless Ward. They were two girls placed on opposite sides of the same cruelty. One taught to purchase safety, the other taught to pay for it with skin. Then Selka's face closed again. I will not lose everything for your pain. Evara's grip tightened on the childhood cast. That is the difference between us. The gold door marks under her feet flared. The chain piece burned red. Elara did not pull it towards Selka. She did not pull it into herself. She placed the cast and the silver fragment on the vault floor between her feet. Return the chain to the vow it was meant to protect, she said. Not to her body. Not to mine. To the lie. The vault hesitated. Orlan whispered. That is not a permitted return. Elara looked at him. Then learn a new one. The childhood cast cracked open completely. The tiny strip of her skin dissolved into gold dust, not vanishing, but rising into the air like breath released after years under salt. The silver chain piece lifted with it and shot upward through the vault ceiling. Above, the salt bridge screamed. Selka's vow chain snapped away from her throat and flew outward. Not strangling her, not saving her, but striking the cracked bridge where her first step had broken the stone. The hidden law beneath the salt flared red. Vorn Luna passage anchored in unwilling lie step witness. First fracture displaced. Ceremony invalid until witness material restored. The court erupted. Selka collapsed to her knees on the bridge, free of the chain but not free of the truth. Dane looked at Elara through the salt barrier. You saved her from the chain. Evara's eyes burned. No. I refused to let my skin be used to kill her. The answer silenced him. Good. Let him learn the difference. The vault shelves began to tremble again. More chain pieces, more vow threads, more broken foot casts stirred in the dark. Elara had opened one return without making herself the container. Now every stolen step wanted the same mercy. Orlan lifted his staff with both hands. Then the source must be destroyed. Dane's wolf shadow snarled, but Orlan did not aim at Elara. He struck the black bowl. The oldest bowl split in half. Salt fire burst upward. And beneath Evera's bare feet, the door-shaped marks turned black. For the first time, the vault did not try to use her. It tried to erase the path back to her body. And from the broken bowl, the salt bridge whispered a new sentence. Lie step origin incomplete. Motherfoot missing. The vault did not ask for Evera's blood next. It asked where her first step had come from. Motherfoot missing. The words whispered from the broken black bowl, cold enough to hollow the air. The door-shaped marks beneath Evera's feet darkened, gold draining from them as if the vault had found the one absence it could use against her. Orlan lowered his staff, breathing hard. There. Origin severed. A lie? Step cannot restore what cannot be traced. Elara steadied herself before her knees could fail. Above, Selka knelt on the cracked salt bridge, free of the vow chain but trapped inside the red law it had exposed. Dane remained behind the salt barrier on the vault stair, close enough to see, not close enough to reach. What does that mean? He demanded. Orlan's voice regained its old cruelty. Without a motherfoot, her step has no lawful origin. Without origin, her witness cannot return. Without return, the vault may classify her as loose material. Loose material. Not girl. Not survivor. Not body. Elara almost smiled because the anger had gone so cold it felt clean. You have gentle names for theft, she said. Then she looked past Orlan. One empty iron bracket hung at the highest shelf of the vault. No cast, no plaque, no thread, only a crescent of dark salt, where something had once rested and been torn away. Ever lifted one shaking hand. Bring it down. Nothing moved. Orlin smiled faintly. You cannot summon what is absent. Evra looked at Dane through the barrier. You want to help? Yes. Then do not cross. Do not touch. Do not rescue. Her voice hardened. Name the room that took it. Diane went still. Orlin's face changed. That was enough. Dane turned toward the court above. The vault is not the only place where witness feet were stored. The court stirred. Orlin hissed. Majesty. Dane did not stop. The royal house kept a private salt room beneath the queen's stair. Evra's breath caught. You knew? I knew there was a room, he said, shame roughening his voice. I was told it held failed vow relics from old wars. And you never asked what failed? No. Then say that too. Dane looked as if the command struck exactly where it should. I did not ask what failed, he said to the court, because every room beneath my house was easier to inherit than question. The dark marks around Avera's ankles stopped spreading. The empty bracket shook. Dane lifted his head. Open the queen's stair. Somewhere above. Stone cracked. Selka whispered. No. The salt wall beside the vault stair split. A narrow chute of pale light opened, and something slid down into the vault. Not a footcast. A slab of salt. It struck the floor and split in two, revealing the impression of a woman's bare foot carved directly from the salt bridge itself. Around the heel glowed the same door-shaped mark as Evera's, older and brighter, but slashed through by a royal blade. A plaque fell beside it. Avalyn Lorne, lie-step witness. Removed from bridge record during Queen's private vow purification. Evera stopped breathing. Lorne, her mother. Not a Luna. Not a hidden queen. A witness. A woman whose step had been cut from the bridge because it proved a royal vow could not stand clean. Dane read the plaque and his face changed. Queen's private vow purification. Evra looked up slowly. Whose? Dane's voice came hollow. My mother's. The vault seemed to tilt. The dead Queen Luna of Morcant. The woman praised in silver songs as the pure salt Luna. Her vow had been purified with Avalyn Lorne's step. Ivara's mother had been harvested to make Dane's bloodline look clean. Evera looked at him through the barrier. Your throne was not only protected by stolen steps. His eyes lifted. It was born walking on them. The mother foot began to glow. Orlin lunged forward. Do not bind mother and child. Evara knelt beside the slab and placed her childhood cast next to Avalyn's carved footprint. The two door-shaped marks faced each other. I am not binding anything, she said. I am returning origin. The vault shook. The black marks around her ankles cracked. Gold light moved between mother and daughter. Not into Evra's body, not into Dane's, not into the bridge, but across the space where the record had been severed. A memory opened. Avalyn Lorne stood on the salt bridge years before, barefoot and bleeding, holding a newborn against her chest. Orlin and royal guards surrounded her. At the marriage shore, Dane's mother waited beneath a white veil, trembling. Avalyn's voice carried through the salt. If your vow needs my step to stand, then your vow has already fallen. A silver blade cut the salt beneath her foot. The bridge screamed. Avalyn shoved the wrapped baby into a servant woman's arms. Hide her where vows cannot count her. The memory collapsed. Evera came back to herself with tears falling silently onto the slab. The vault whispered. Origin restored. Lie-step line living. The gold marks beneath Evera's feet reignited. Not as a Luna claim. As a returned path. Selka's voice broke from above. If her mother's step returns, the queen's vow will be challenged. Dane looked toward the broken bridge. For one breath, Evera saw the choice in him. Mother or truth. Throne or witness. The boy taught not to look. The alpha who had ordered her to walk. Then Dane said, clearly enough for every noble house to hear, challenge it. The salt bridge split from end to end, and beneath the royal marriage shore, the portrait of Diane's mother began to weep salt. Salt ran from the queen's painted eyes before anyone in the moonsalt court dared speak. It slid down the portrait's silver frame, thick and white, gathering at the bottom like proof too heavy for beauty to hold. Queen Luna Marielle Morcant had watched over every royal crossing for 20 years, painted in white silk, praised as the pure salt Luna, the woman whose vow had supposedly made Dane's bloodline unquestionable. Now her portrait was crying salt above a bridge split open by the footstep of a girl they had called Oathless. Elara stood below in the vault, one hand on her mother's carved footprint, the other closed around her own broken childhood cast. Gold had returned beneath her feet, but it did not feel like triumph. It felt like a path asking for more than she had left. Dane stared at the weeping portrait from behind the salt barrier. He did not look like a king then. He looked like a son being forced to read his mother's name in a crime. Aurel struck his staff against the stair. This is contamination. The girl has disturbed preserved royal memory. Elara lifted her head. Then why does it only bleed where my mother's record was cut? The court above went silent. Selka, still kneeling on the broken bridge, seized the silence like a weapon. If Queen Marielle's vow is challenged, then Dane's throne is challenged. There it was. Not grief. Not horror. Fear of inheritance. Dane's wolf shadow flickered behind him, restless and black, as if trying to scent the truth of its own blood and finding only salt. Elara waited. This could not be another truth dragged out of him by her wound. He had to choose it where everyone could hear. Dane lifted his face to the court. My mother's vow stood on Aurel Lorne's stolen step. The salt bridge groaned. Orlan's face twisted. Majesty, retract that. Dane did not. Morcant marriage law praised my mother as pure, while another woman bled beneath her vow. My throne inherited that lie. The salt tears fell faster. Elara closed her eyes once. Not forgiveness. Recognition. He had finally spoken without making himself the victim of the truth. Selka's voice sharpened. And if your rule weakens? If border wolves tear this kingdom apart because you chose a servant's accusation over royal continuity? Elara answered before Dane could. Truth and opportunity are not the same thing. The court turned toward the vault. She raised Aurel's footprint slightly. If they use this to steal from him, they are still thieves. But that does not make the theft under him clean. Dane looked at her then. Something passed between them. Not love. Note absolution. The beginning of a language that could survive without lies. Aurel saw the shift and moved quickly. If royal vows are unstable, the Salt Council must preserve succession. Lady Selka's passage remains closest to completion. The hidden law beneath Selka's knees flared red. Vorn passage anchored in unwilling witness. Stability invalid. Selka flinched. Elara looked at her. You are not stability. You are standing on stolen ground. Selka's face hardened, but she did not answer. The bridge answered instead. Under the cracked salt, old footprints rose one by one. Some small, some adult, some servant, some noble, all hidden beneath royal vows. They glowed faintly, not asking for a queen, not asking for revenge, asking to be counted. At the center, Aurel Lorne's missing final step surfaced. It faced the sea. Evara's throat tightened. Her mother had not only been used. She had tried to leave. Aurel lunged toward the glowing record. Elara moved first. She pressed her marked foot beside Aurel's final step. Gold salt fire rose between Aurel and the bridge. Do not touch her record. Aurel froze, not because he obeyed her, but because the bridge did. The old priest's face went pale. A memory opened across the broken span. Aurel Lorne stood on the marriage shore years before, barefoot and bleeding, newborn Elara wrapped against her chest. Queen Marielle waited under a white veil, trembling. Aurel held the silver blade. Aurelin's voice cut through the wind. If the queen wants a clean vow, let her step where I step and answer what the bridge asks. Marielle stepped forward. One step. Then Aurel cut Aurelin's footprint from the salt. The bridge screamed. The memory ended. No one moved. Dane's voice came hollow. My mother tried to walk. Elara looked at the weeping portrait. Marielle had not been innocent, but she had not been allowed to answer either. Selka whispered. The council cut both women. The bridge accepted the sentence. A new line burned beneath the salt. Queen's vow incomplete. Witness step severed before answer. Dane looked at the words as if they had entered his ribs. Elara turned to him. Your mother's vow cannot be healed by pretending mine was nothing. He looked back at her. Then what does it require? The salt bridge answered with a narrow golden path stretching from the vault to Avelin's final step. Elara knew before Orlan smiled. A living lie-step walker had to finish the severed witness passage. Not to become Luna. Not to claim Dane. To complete the record his court had cut. Dane went pale. No. Evra looked at the path. There was another way. His eyes lifted to hers. You could have looked before I had to walk. The words broke something in him, but they did not break the path. Elara carried her mother's carved footprint and her own childhood cast up from the vault. Dane's hand lifted once, then stopped. He had learned not to touch what he had not yet earned the right to protect. Elara placed one bare foot onto the golden path. The salt bridge flared white, and every stolen footprint beneath it rose at once, blocking her next step. The risen footprints did not let Evra walk because they were not asking for another body to carry them. They had already been carried too long. All across the broken salt bridge. Servant steps and noble steps, child steps and grown women's steps, glowed beneath the moon like buried witnesses finally refusing the dark. They formed a wall before Evra's bare foot. Not to stop the truth, but to stop the old shape of it. One girl walking, everyone else hidden under her pain. Elara understood before anyone spoke. No, she whispered, not through me. Orlan's eyes narrowed. The bridge chose a living lie. Step. The passage must be completed. Elara looked at the old priest. You still think completion means using one body until the law looks clean? The footprints brightened. Dane stood at the edge of the golden path, unable to enter it, unable to command it. His wolf shadow crouched beside him. Silent now, no longer snarling at what it did not understand. What does the bridge require? He asked. Evra turned toward the court above, toward the nobles who had watched her forced crossing, toward Selka kneeling among broken red law, toward the portrait of Queen Marielle still weeping salt. Names, she said. Not substitutes. The bridge answered with a low sound under the stone. Avalon Lorne's final step glowed first. Elara placed her mother's carved footprint against it. I return Avalon Lorne to her own witness, she said. Not to the Queen's vow. Not to Morcant blood. Not to the Salt Council. The salt beneath her foot warmed. The memory opened one last time. Avalon stood before Queen Marielle, newborn Evra in her arms, salt wind tearing at her hair. If your vow needs my step to stand, then your vow has already fallen. This time, Orlan's blade did not cut the footprint away. This time, Queen Marielle stepped forward. The portrait above cracked from corner to corner. Salt poured from its frame and struck the bridge, forming a second footprint beside Avalon's. Marielle Morcant. Queen's vow incomplete. Answer owed. Dane inhaled sharply. Evra looked at him. Name her truth. His voice was rough. Marielle Morcant was not pure Salt Luna. The court gasped. Dane continued, each word harder than the last. Her vow was incomplete. Her passage was protected by Avalon Lorne's stolen step. My bloodline stood under a silence the crown benefited from. The bridge did not collapse. It steadied. Evra looked at Selka. Your turn. Selka's face twisted. No. The red law beneath her knees tightened around her like a circle. Evra did not move toward her. Then stay there. Selka looked at the court. At Dane. At the broken bridge. At the vault below that had begun returning what her family had paid to hide. For the first time, no one reached to rescue her from consequence. Her voice came thin. Vorn Passage was purchased. The bridge listened. She swallowed. My chain was anchored in Evra Lorne's childhood step. I knew purchased ground existed. I used it because I was taught power was safer than truth. The red law around her cracked. Note absolution. Record. Evra nodded once, not in forgiveness, but because truth had entered the salt. Orlan stepped back. The movement betrayed him. The old priest lifted his staff and struck the bridge with all his strength. Then I invoke final custody. All witness, feet, returned or unrestored, belong to Salt Council preservation until the realm is stable. Nothing happened. Orlan struck again. The staff split. Every footprint on the bridge turned toward him. Not toward a Luna, not toward a king, toward the keeper who had mistaken storage for law. Names began rising from the salt. Narapel, Maëlys Morcant, Evelyn Lorne. Dozens more followed. Girls from kitchens, women from laundries, noble daughters removed before contracts, oathless children used because no one would ask why they bled after weddings. Each name struck Orlan's robe and burned away a title. High Salt Seer, Keeper of Bridge Law, Guardian of Vows. One by one, the names stripped him down until only Orlan Vale remained, shaking on the bridge with no staff, no council voice, no sacred words left to hide behind. Dane stepped forward then, but not with a sword. He removed the black royal clasp from his cloak and placed it on the cracked salt. Until every witness foot is reviewed, no royal marriage law will be enforced through borrowed passage. The court erupted. Dane's voice cut through it. Any house that calls theft stability may challenge me in open court, after naming the feet beneath its vows. Silence fell harder than fear. Elara looked at him. It was not enough. But it was the first stone of something that did not require her body underneath it. The golden path before her changed. It no longer ran straight to Dane's throne, or Selka's chain, or the royal portrait. It widened. Each stolen footprint shifted aside. Not disappearing, but making room only after its name burned above it. Elara walked one step, then another. Not as bride, not as Luna, not as sacrifice. As the first returned record, when she reached the center of the bridge, the salt beneath her healed only where truth had been spoken. The rest remained cracked. Good. Let the kingdom see where repair had not yet reached. Dane stopped several paces away. Elara. She turned. He did not step closer. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not ask what she was to him. What do you require? He asked. Elara looked at the bridge, the vault, the kneeling court, the weeping portrait, the dark tide below. Every oathless child removed from marriage records, she said. Found, named, returned if they choose it. It will be done, not by royal mercy. He bowed his head. By witness law. Only then did the salt bridge accept his words. The wolf shadow behind him lowered its head to the bridge, not to Elara, but to the footprints beneath her feet. At dawn, the tide below turned silver. Elara stood barefoot on the broken bridge, no longer empty, no longer useful, no longer stored. She had not been chosen by the salt bridge. She had become the record it could no longer keep stolen. And behind her, one by one, the buried steps began walking home.